What if the man you married stopped seeing you? Stopped asking how you felt? Stopped noticing you were slipping away? She gave him everything, years of her life, her dreams, her body, and still, she felt invisible. But then, someone else saw her, listened, cared, touched the parts of her soul she thought had died. And just when she thought it was only a moment, she was pregnant. But who was the father? Have you ever loved someone so much that you didn't notice when the silence began to grow between you? Meguri stood at the station platform, suitcase in hand, as the autumn wind brushed her coat and stirred something restless inside her. Her husband, Harry, beside her, was answering yet another work call. She could hear the familiar tone, distant, practical, distracted. She had gotten used to that sound. It had become the soundtrack of their marriage. They were heading back to Harry's hometown for the first time in years. Not for a romantic getaway, not to rekindle anything, but because Harry had meetings to attend and a convenient place to stay, a friend's house in the quiet suburbs, away from the noise of their daily grind in Tokyo. His name was Albert. Albert had been Harry's best friend since they were kids. When they met at the station, he gave them both a warm smile, the kind of smile that tried to hide something else beneath it. His house was beautiful, modest, clean, surrounded by trees that were already turning gold. He had done well for himself. He was polite, respectful, even charming in a gentle way. And he lived alone. At dinner that night, Meguri noticed how he always let Harry speak first, how he laughed at the right moments, how he poured their wine with steady hands. But there was something in the way he looked at Harry, not just fondness, something older, something unsettled. She found out later Albert had once loved someone too, deeply, passionately, but he never told Harry. And before he could, Harry had fallen for the same woman, and she had chosen Harry. Not Meguri, someone else, a different story, a different heartbreak, but it lingered. Maybe it was just old pain, or maybe seeing Harry now, married and settled, brought back everything Albert had tried to forget. But whatever it was, it made the air around them feel thick and quietly charged. The first few days passed peacefully. Meguri felt a little lighter. No schedules, no noise, just slow breakfasts, quiet walks under the trees, and stories from a past she wasn't a part of. She watched Harry come alive again, laughing with his friend like he used to when they first married. She wanted to believe this trip would bring them closer. But somehow, even in that small town with no distractions, he still kept looking at his phone more than her. One afternoon, while Harry was out at a meeting, Albert offered her tea. He asked her how long she and Harry had been together. 10 years, she said. Feels like 20 sometimes. Albert chuckled softly. And sometimes not enough? She looked at him. There was no judgment in his tone, just quiet understanding. She nodded, surprising even herself. They talked about little things, about her dreams, her loneliness, things she hadn't said out loud in years, things Harry hadn't asked about in even longer. Albert didn't interrupt. He just listened. And something about that, just being seen, made her feel strange. Not guilty, not ashamed, just real. The next few days blurred gently into each other. Harry was busy most of the time, running between client calls and project meetings. And when he was home, he was exhausted. He'd fall asleep on the couch, phone still in hand. She would watch the light of the screen flicker against his face and wonder when she stopped being a priority. Albert started cooking for them. Simple things, rice dishes, grilled vegetables, the kind of food that tasted like memory. He was thoughtful in small ways. A second cup of tea just when she needed it. A folded blanket. A quiet walk to the garden after dinner. It wasn't romantic, not yet. But it wasn't entirely innocent either. She told herself it was just kindness, that it was nothing. But a part of her, the part she had buried under routines, responsibilities, and unmet needs, began to awaken. Late one evening, after Harry had gone to bed early, Meguri stayed back to help Albert clean up. "You don't have to," he said gently. "I want to," she replied, almost too quickly. Their fingers brushed over a wine glass, just for a second, and that second lingered like a forgotten note in a song that had no ending yet. Nothing was said, nothing happened, but something had shifted. And in that quiet shift, Meguri realized this visit wasn't just a break from the city. It was something else entirely. Something she didn't see coming. Something she couldn't unfeel. Have you ever been in a place so peaceful, it made you forget what was missing in your life? Days in the countryside rolled on like waves, soft, slow, almost hypnotic. The house was surrounded by fields that turned gold in the sun. Crickets whispered at night. Even the rain was gentler there. And in that quiet rhythm, Meguri felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness, presence, herself. She started waking up early, before Harry, not to work, not to serve, but to sit by the kitchen window, watch the morning light break across the hills, and sip tea that Albert had already set out for her. Always just the way she liked it. He never made it feel like anything more than kindness. But that's what made it dangerous. Because kindness, when you've been emotionally starved for years, feels like a feast. They talked more, sometimes for hours. Albert never pried. He didn't ask inappropriate questions. He just listened when she spoke. About the art she used to make before marriage. About how lonely she'd felt raising their son, mostly on her own, while Harry traveled. About how she sometimes sat in their apartment, staring out the window, wondering what her life might have been like if she'd chosen differently. She didn't know why she was telling Albert all this. Maybe it was the house. Maybe it was the quiet. Or maybe it was because someone was finally listening. Harry barely noticed. He came home with good news about a deal, celebrated with a bottle of champagne, kissed her on the cheek without really looking in her eyes, fell asleep with a content smile on his face. Meguri smiled too, but inside, a strange ache grew deeper. One afternoon, Harry left for a client dinner in town and would be gone until late. Meguri stayed back, claiming she felt tired, It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Albert asked her if she'd like to take a walk before sunset. The path behind the house curved into a forest. Leaves crunched under their feet. Birds called out from somewhere deep in the trees. And for a while, they didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Halfway down the trail, she stopped. "You ever think about the past?" she asked quietly. "All the time," he said. "Sometimes I wonder if I got stuck in it." Meguri looked up at him. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a softness that made her want to cry. "I used to paint," she whispered, "every week. For years, I just stopped one day." Albert nodded. "Not because you didn't love it, but because no one asked why you needed it." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with unspoken understanding. He didn't touch her, didn't step closer. He just let her feel whatever she needed to feel. And in that space, she felt safe. After the walk, she excused herself to her room. She needed time, distance, breathing room. But the lines were blurring. She started noticing the small things. The way Albert's hands moved when he cooked. The way his voice dropped lower when they spoke at night. The way his eyes lingered just a little too long on her lips when she smiled. And she hated that she noticed, because she still loved Harry, or at least the version of him she remembered. The one who made her laugh with stupid jokes. The one who held her hand on the train because he liked feeling connected. The one who used to ask about her dreams before work took over everything. But that Harry felt like a distant echo now. And Albert was standing in front of her, real and present. One evening, Harry called to say he'd be home late again. Some delay, some meeting. She didn't even listen to the details. Meguri went downstairs to make tea. The kitchen light was low. She thought she was alone until she saw Albert by the counter, quietly finishing a book. He looked up. Their eyes met, and neither of them looked away. "I shouldn't be here," she said softly. "But you are," he replied. There was no seduction, no rush, just a stillness between them, full of everything they hadn't said. He stepped forward, slowly, carefully, as if giving her time to stop him. She didn't. "I've tried not to feel this," Albert whispered. "I've tried to respect the lines, but Meguri, I see you. I see how lonely you are, and I don't want anything from you except the truth." She trembled. It had been so long since anyone asked her for the truth. And in that moment, she broke, not because she was weak, but because someone had finally touched the place in her heart that had gone numb. Have you ever crossed a line you promised yourself you never would, and felt both terrified and alive? That night, everything changed. Meguri didn't remember how their conversation ended, only the way his voice trembled when he said her name, the way his hand brushed hers like it was the most natural thing in the world. She didn't plan for it to happen. She didn't even know how to stop it. But when Albert leaned in, slowly, giving her every second to pull away, she didn't move. And when he kissed her, it wasn't explosive or wild or desperate. It was gentle, heartbreaking, like someone trying to memorize the taste of a memory before it disappears forever. Afterward, she sat on the floor of her guest room, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the wall in the dark. Her heart pounded so loudly, it drowned out the silence. She didn't cry. She didn't feel regret. Not yet. She just felt awake. For the first time in years. In the days that followed, The air between them changed. Charged, fragile, but real. They didn't speak of what happened. They didn't need to. It was there in the way he passed her coffee in the morning, their fingers brushing just a little longer. In the way their eyes locked from across the room when Harry wasn't looking. Meguri had never been the type to lie, but now every breath felt like a secret. Albert didn't push her. He didn't ask for more, but he was there, always there when she couldn't sleep, when she felt lost in her own thoughts, when she needed silence without questions. And that was what unraveled her, because Harry, sweet Harry, hadn't asked how she felt in a long time. He loved her. She knew that, but it was a love wrapped in routine, familiarity, obligation. He gave her a roof, a shared calendar, a life built on years of commitment. But somewhere along the way, the soul of their marriage had grown quiet. Albert had begun speaking to the silence Meguri carried. One night, Harry smiled and said, "You've seemed lighter lately." She forced a smile true, but not the whole truth. When Harry left for a work trip, she felt relief and guilt. That night, Albert knocked on her door with a book, and she let him in. It wasn't passion, it was connection. "I was already falling apart," she told him. They shared quiet moments, glances, walks, rushes of touch, but guilt grew. She couldn't look at Harry the same. He remained unaware, believing their marriage was strong. Then she missed her period. A pregnancy test confirmed it positive. In the bathroom, she sat frozen. When Harry returned, joyful and unsuspecting, she smiled and nodded, but her hands trembled. Only she and Albert knew the terrifying question neither dared voice. Who is the father? And more hauntingly, would she ever tell the truth? Have you ever felt joy and dread at exactly the same time? Meguri sat at the edge of the bed, hands resting on her belly. It had been a week since she found out. A week of sleepless nights. A week of wondering if the universe was punishing her, or giving her something she didn't dare ask for. Harry was overjoyed. He became a different man overnight. He came home early. And Meguri, she smiled when he touched her. She let herself cry when he left the room, because her body was carrying a truth she wasn't ready to face. The baby. A life. A beginning. But whose? Albert hadn't said a word since the night she told him. She'd pulled him aside in the garden, away from Harry's laughter echoing through the house, and whispered the words that changed everything. "I'm pregnant." His face didn't change, not at first. Then just a flicker, a breath caught, eyes that softened like rain touching stone. He didn't ask the question. He didn't have to. He only said, "Whatever you need, I'll be here." And that broke her more than anything else, because he didn't demand answers. He didn't ask for promises. He didn't try to keep her. He just stayed. The last few days of the trip moved like slow water. She avoided being alone with Albert. She clung to Harry's joy. She buried herself in moments that looked like happiness, hoping they would turn into something real. Harry suggested they take one last family photo in front of the house before leaving. The sun was setting. The sky was soft and pink. He held her close, smiling wide, unaware of everything unspoken between them. Behind the lens, he was calm, respectful, distant almost, as if building walls to protect what little of himself he had left. But when Meguri looked into his eyes one last time, she saw it. The ache. The goodbye. She didn't know how to carry both the joy and the guilt. She didn't even know if she was strong enough to face what came next. All she knew was that, for the first time in a long time, she felt alive, not because of the affair, but because someone had reminded her she was still a woman, a person. a soul worth listening to. She never told Harry the full truth. Maybe one day she would. But for now, she carried it alone. That child grew up in a house filled with love. Harry adored them. She never reached out. But she never forgot him. And sometimes when the house was quiet and the child was asleep, and Harry sat beside her reading a book, completely content Meguri would close her eyes and let herself feel it, not regret, not shame, but a deep, quiet truth. Sometimes a single moment can change you forever, and not all love stories are meant to be lived out loud. Some are meant to wake you up, teach you who you are, and then fade into memory, like the last note of a song you never meant to hear again. And that, too, is love. Just not the kind you keep, the kind you carry. If this story made you feel something, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever held a secret that changed your life, you're not alone.